welcome to Evolve Through God. My name is Angela Goodman. I am your host for today's show and likely many more to come. I have an amazing woman with me today who has become a dear friend of mine, and I cannot wait for you all to hear her story and her journey and her relationship with God because it is so exciting. It is exciting. I love yours. I honestly like what I know of your story, Angie. I love. So everyone, welcome Angie Manson to the show.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
It's been a long journey. Like I'm like, wow, it's been a long, strange trip. I guess that's a good way to put
it. That is definitely one way to put it. And it's funny. I usually start the show with, tell us about when you were a kid, how you first learned about God. And I feel like with your story, I'm like, I don't know if that's the right place to start. So I'm just going to leave it up to you. Where do you want to start in your relationship with God?
Yeah, it's interesting because I wasn't, my grandma was very Catholic. My mom was very not. And so I didn't have a whole lot of religious upbringing. I knew I liked it because I loved my grandma, or I believed in it because she believed in it. But it was not something that I typically did. She didn't force it on any of the family. So it was like, if you like it, it's here. If not, don't worry about it. And so for me, my relationship to God was sort of my own spiritual journey. So it wasn't necessarily along the route of any specific religion or Bible or anything like that. It was more of a understanding of there's absolutely something bigger than me. And then learning how that shows up for me, which is different from what I saw is showing up for other people. And that's sort of been my big journey is it's not in the box. It's been very outside the box, but realizing it's still there, even though it's not fitting into how other people see it.
Do you remember how old you were, like roundabout when you realized that there was something bigger than you?
It's interesting as you say that. So I grew up in the 80s, very rebellious, hard rock, heavy metal, that sort of thing. And heavy metal very much like embraced like Satan and devil and not that I believed that way, but I thought it was super cool, like 666, number of the beast. Yeah, Iron Maiden. Shout at the devil, Motley Crue. Yeah, I just liked it because it was cool. And there was a couple points in time when I was a teenager where I was like, yeah, Satan. And then weird stuff would happen in my house. And I was like, oh, maybe there's some truth to this because it kind of scared me. There was some stuff with the Ouija board. There was some stuff with that. And it was enough that it made me realize, okay, if there's something like bad that I'm sort of invoking, maybe there's something good I could be invoking on the other side of that. So I sort of maintained my rebel attitude, but not with like really any high intention in it. And for me, I started sort of getting in trouble. And that would be the point in time where I would pray to God. Like that's the only time. Oh, I'm in trouble. I'm in jail. Here's my Bible. I promise I'll be a good person.
Right.
And as soon as I get out, I forget all about it. But I always had this conversation going with God. And I started to realize there has to be, it can't just be when I'm in trouble. It can't just be when I need something. I've got to develop a much deeper relationship with my higher power. Because I'm also a very kind person and I believe, you give what you get and I don't want to just be a taker. And it was sort of that self-reflection as I was going through all my troubles and jail and courts and what put me on my path with recovery is realizing that God always has my back. Even though I didn't realize it, like much worse things could have happened to me than what I actually went through. Like literal, I called them my guardian angels. I put myself in so many dangerous situations and somehow I came out somewhat unscathed.
Yeah. Do you have any specific examples of that? Because I'll say this, and your story is so inspiring. So, as Angie alluded to, had struggled with addiction early on in her life, and she has recovered and also created a beautiful recovery environment for other people. And so, I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit more about Elevate today. But that being said, was there a specific time where you were in a situation where like really felt the need in that moment to pray to God and really feel kind of that shift for you? Is there a specific story or moment?
Absolutely. I'll trace it
Yeah.
back to when I was
Yeah.
in jail. Here I am like a 20-year-old girl. I get arrested. I'm on this top bunk. I'm surrounded by these very hardened girls who were, hardcore junkies, addicts, all that sort of stuff. And I really was like, oh my gosh, God, what am I doing? Where am I at? And I really prayed, help me get out of this situation. Help me get out of this situation.
Was that your
And
first
that's
time? Was that your first time in jail?
I was I was arrested 7 times as a juvenile, but
Okay.
juvenile jail is a lot different than grown-up jail. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wasn't scared in juvenile jail. In big girl jail, I was frightened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until we all watched like Charlotte's Web and all the girls were crying, and I'm like, okay, these are
They're
all just
human.
they're humans. They're just like me. We're all girls at the end of the day with hearts. And
Yeah.
so it was more like I realized like I was facing 10 years in prison, and it
Okay.
was a really big situation. And I knew if I went to prison, that would probably be my path in life because I'd seen so many girls become sort of institutionalized by the process.
Mhm.
It's very hard to get out of it once you get into it, especially if you don't have like a solid home base or something to
Right.
come back to. So I prayed and prayed and prayed to get out of that situation, whatever that looked like. And for me, I was thinking, I'm just going to be released from all the stuff and go on my life. But what ended up happening is I got a judge who was looking at giving me 10 years in prison from the crime that I had committed because it was ruled as a felony. And he gave me instead a year in rehab and 3 years of probation plus some restitution. And at
Wow.
the time, I didn't see that that was the answer, but that truly was the biggest gift that he ever could have gave me because it put me on the path. Here I am 31 years later. I never
Mhm.
left it. I never took it for granted. I realized what a gift that was. And because of that full surrender and trust, that's why I'm still here today.
Wow. Wow. So you find yourself in this situation, you start praying, you recognize the gravity of it. What is rehab like for you when you go through that process?
Yeah, it's so funny. I recently found my journal from when I first went in. So 31 years ago,
Wow.
almost to the date. And I've been reading like one passage a day just
Oh,
to
I
see my
love
mindset.
that.
It's been
Yeah.
so amazing. It's been so
Yeah.
amazing. So reading my mindset then compared to now, because I could have never known where I'd be right now. There was so much foreshadowing that was happening at that time that I had no clue. And when you read this, you're like, dude, there's God right there. Like I was
Hmm.
like a client, and the executive director is like, "Hey, we have this radio spot, and the guy can't do it. You go out there with your other client." And I'm a client going and talking on the radio. I have no idea what I'm doing, but
Oh,
who
wow.
knew? 25 years later, I'd have a podcast where I'm doing exactly the same thing.
Mhm.
So there was so much foreshadowing, but for me, like getting sober at that point in time, finding a group, finding a purpose, finding a passion, like who would have thought? I didn't think
Yeah.
I ever could make this happen, but it's almost that blind trust and faith, which has
Mhm.
gotten me through these 31 years, even when things seem like absolutely unsurmountable, the hardest stuff you could go through. It's me realizing, but look what you've overcome. Turn it over to your higher power. Keep moving, keep making the steps forward, keep
Yeah.
doing this. Don't
Yeah.
force, don't push, don't try to make something that's not real. And this surrender piece. And I know you know what that's like, and it's
Oh
way easier
boy.
said than done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk about surrender because to your point, right? It's one of those things that's really a challenge probably for all of us. Especially those of us who've had to make our way in life and we have this feeling of control all the time because we feel like we can save ourselves pain and suffering if we can control what's going on. So talk to me about what that surrender process is and what it looks like for you and I mean, how do you communicate with God through that? Because I think it's one of the hardest things we have to do.
It's one of the hardest things, and I never actually even considered surrender because for me somehow that means I've given up. But it was after we went to Ed's house together, and we
Mm-hmm.
were on that group text, and you recall it was right after I sort of had that life or death situation when I was by
Yes.
myself in
Yes.
Hawaii,
And
and
we
I
need to
was
talk
like,
about that too. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and that was the first surrender. I was, out in the ocean by myself. I was all alone. I had no phone. I had no people. Nobody even knew where I was. And I'm in the blackness of night, and I just kept like paddling. And that was my first like hint of surrender. Like, you're not going to beat the ocean. The ocean is, it is like a very large um entity to try
Yeah.
to
Yes.
win. And
Yes.
so it was almost like I just had to flip on my back and sort of surrender, like, holy crap, this could be it. This would be terrible. I want to say goodbye to my kids, all the other stuff. And I didn't realize at that point in time that that's what I had done, is surrender. So then when we got on the group text afterwards with the ladies that we were in at Ed's with, and I forget which one, she was saying her word for the year was surrender. And
Mhm.
she was telling me, she was telling us these stories. And I'm like, dude, how do you just surrender? Like, I can't surrender. I'm a fighter. Like, I refuse to surrender. And I fought like that whole year. I refused to surrender. I
Yeah.
will fight. I will win. I will do this. And it wasn't until things got so bad that I finally realized, like, I can't like think my way out of this. I can't figure myself out of this. I don't even know what the answer is. And that's where I began surrendering. And by that, it's more like, I don't know what to do. I just need your help. I trust that you're going to guide me on the right way. And that's where my relationship really got strong, was saying, I
Mm.
trust you to guide me and help me. And then realizing how many times in my life that I had been trusted and guided, that intuition, that higher spirit,
Yeah.
that's when it really all started to make me realize, like, surrender isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just means you don't know what to do and you need help and you're asking for help. And for me, that's very hard to do. Asking for help is it's one of the hardest things I
Oh,
struggle with, for
I can
sure.
totally empathize with that 100%. So you're in the ocean. You were on a paddleboard, right, at the time?
No, I didn't even have a noodle. I was by myself
Oh
because I
my
was like,
gosh.
I didn't even have
But
flippers.
how
Oh,
did you get out there into the water? Because that part
actually, I
I
take
don't
that back. I
remember.
didn't have flippers. I had a noodle, but it started breaking because I was at an Airbnb. And so I just took the noodle out. I'm fine. And then it just started dissolving in my hand, basically. So it was just me in the ocean by
Yeah.
myself, no flippers. And I'm just like, what am I doing out here? All of a sudden, all the regrets, like, I was going to be off grid and so cool. And look at me and I'm tough. And I'm like, you're a freaking idiot. You're like,
Yeah.
nobody knows where you are. Nobody knows what you're doing. You're by yourself in Hawaii on New Year's Eve. The rest of the world
Yes.
is out here celebrating. And you're like, thought it was super cool to go snorkeling at night by yourself.
Oh my goodness. I don't know why I was thinking you were at least on a paddleboard. I don't know why that like thought crossed my brain. You were literally in the middle of the ocean in the dark by yourself
Yeah.
for like
Yeah.
hours, right? It was like
For
hours.
hours. I mean, honestly, I had no concept of time because I didn't even have a watch on. Like, I had no phone.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
no idea how long I was out there, how long I was paddling, how long I was fighting it. That was a big part of it, is like, I'm trying to swim to shore and I'm just getting exhausted. I'm making zero progress because I'm like stuck in a rib tide. And so I'm just trying and trying and I'm exhausting myself. And I'm like, I can't cross over this to get to shore. And that was
Yeah.
like the first surrender, is like, okay, well, then I just got to conserve my energy and lay back and just try to float and paddle and hope that I land somewhere at some point.
And what happened? I mean, what happened?
So after hours or however much time I was out there, I started hearing like people way off in the distance. And I'm
Um,
like, oh wait, am I near? Am I close? And I flip over and I actually see the shoreline. I was like, holy crap, I'm actually close. And I started swimming, but it was so weird. Like, the emotion that I felt was embarrassment. Like, I wasn't like, oh, gratitude. It was like this
yeah.
weird, like, I'm embarrassed and these people are going to see me out here like drowning. And it was the oddest feeling for me. But I was able to get to shore, and I got to shore and I just cried profusely for hours, like, just gratitude that I was going to be able to hold my kids again, see my kids
Hmm.
again,
Hmm.
get my affairs in order, which, I did not have my affairs in order whatsoever.
Hmm.
Kind of still don't, but but I was like, okay. So maybe that wasn't the lesson, but I felt like very strongly that I needed to do that.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Why would you
Uh,
so have you felt that level of embarrassment since that moment?
um, I don't think I have. I
Yeah, I
mean,
think it's
maybe after the
fascinating.
fact of situations where like I reread the situation and then maybe I felt embarrassment after it, but not in it, but
Yeah,
nothing like
not to
that.
that
Just
degree.
I was embarrassed because I had screamed out for help. And then I was embarrassed that I put myself in that situation and I screamed for help. I think
Yeah.
that was my embarrassing part, that I put myself in that situation, that I
Yeah.
needed that kind of help.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but he was there for you, so it didn't matter.
Oh,
It
oh
didn't
my
matter.
God.
But I would say that you'll probably never have that level of embarrassment again because I would about guarantee the tears that you cried out were all of that emotion
A
on the
hundred
on the
percent,
beach that
a
night.
100%.
Yeah.
And you don't realize when you go through something like that, there's this PTSD that you go through. Like I
Mhm.
wasn't quote unquote normal. I wasn't myself for a while. Like I was
Mhm.
really, and that's when, we had the talk and, the surrender thing started
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah.
Like I just didn't realize like the sort of box that would open on self-healing and this renewed relationship with God and spirit and working together, not uh independently of one
Mhm.
another. That truly put me on like that deep spiritual journey that I've been on for the last 3 years.
Yeah, so you get off the beach. You get back from Hawaii. What does life look like for you when you get back?
I rolled straight into my annuals and I was still like just kind of shocked, and everybody was
Mhm.
kind of shocked to hear that what I had went through. They didn't realize I'd almost like died out there.
Yeah,
And part of
yeah.
part of part of that journey, and it started because Ed told me like, what would you be without Elevate? And I got in my
Uh-huh.
head that I needed to sort of eat, pray, love. Like I need to go find myself. And what I found is I almost died by myself. And I was like, what the heck, Ed? Like, what kind of message am I supposed to get out of this? And so I went through like this process of just feeling very alone. My kids had moved
Mhm.
out, and due to the pandemic, like whatever we've been going through, I was just feeling very, very, very alone. And as opposed to finding artificial relationships or surrounding myself with people, I leaned into that even more. I said, okay, if we're going to be alone, let's be alone with
Mm.
God, and
Mhm.
let's fall in love with him. So I had met one of my friends, she's a shaman, and she was telling me, and she's super funny, but she was saying she had this inappropriate relationship with Source. And I was like, how do you have that? And she's
Yeah,
like, dude, I don't know
tell
how
us
to
about
explain it,
that.
but Source has always had my back, no matter what crazy situations. And I thought, I've never had an inappropriate relationship with Source or God. I want to do that. And so that kind of put me on the path to even realize that that is possible. You can have this relationship with God. And what does that look like for me? Because for me, it looks
Yeah.
different than it looks like
And
for
what
other
did it look like for
people.
you? So what did you do?
For me, it's daily long meditations, breathing, walking meditations, being alone with my thoughts, the good, the bad, the ugly, going through the ups and the downs and doing it on my own. For some reason, that was my big learning,
Mhm.
is that I needed to go through this with just me and God. And I've always had people around me. I've had my kids, I've had my family. And this was the first time in my life where it was literally just the two of us. And so it's interesting, Angela. Like I will let YouTube play music for me and it goes
Mhm.
off of all, the past stuff, but
Mhm.
I will walk and I will process the song, and there's all these songs that are about, from Creed, from all these different things, and I pictured that that was God speaking to me. That was Source speaking to me, and it was truly falling in love with them, which I realized was falling in love with
With
myself.
yourself. Yeah. That's so powerful. That's so
Yeah.
powerful. So do you still to this day do all of that yeah. What
All
is
that
your
stuff all the
what
time.
does your
And
routine look like for that?
yeah, so Well, right now, like you, I'm doing 75 hard. So, I'll go
Yes.
walking. And that's my communion with nature. And
Mhm.
for me, I've heard internally that God communicates to me through animals. I love animals more than
Mm,
anything on this planet, almost more than humans. Always had this very strong connection to animals. And so for me, animals show up in my world and
yeah.
they're who I get my relationship with. And so I always go walking. I'm very fortunate. I have the ocean, I have the forest. You've been out
Mhm.
here.
Oh
Like
yeah, it's beautiful
I
there.
have nature in its fullest. So every day I go walk in nature, wherever that is. And that for me is where I really get to experience feeling closeness to source and God. And mostly because it kind of fills my heart with gratitude. And when you're in gratitude, you're in love. It kind of makes a lot of the other problems sort of go away, at least for that moment in time.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I
Yeah,
love.
so if you remember when you were out here, it was
Hmm.
so funny because and this is important because like I always go, my team kind of thinks I'm wacky because I'll tell them, "Oh my God, do you know what happened today?" And I'm like pointing out these weird synchronicities, and half the time they're like, "Damn, that shit never happens to me." And half the time I think they're like, "You're
They're
full of
just
shit."
not looking for it yet. That's
Yeah,
all.
yes,
It's
but when
happening.
you were here, we decided to go do that walk on the beach.
Uh-huh.
And I'd never, I mean, I'd lived here 30 years and I'd never walked on that beach. And I was out there with Jordan and I was like, and we were talking, we were looking at sea anemones, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, that's not a sea anemone." And somehow we got on the subject of starfish, and I'm like, "Dude, in all my years, I've never seen a starfish on that beach." And I looked at Jordan, I was like, "It'd be super cool, dude, is if let's call it in. Let's ask God to show us a starfish." I shit you not, Angela, within 30 seconds, all of a sudden Jordan's like, "No way." And we saw a starfish.
Yep.
Never seen one my whole life here. All of a sudden, there was a starfish, and it was just like amazing. And it was almost just like this beautiful showing to Jordan, like,
Hmm.
hey, let's lean into this God thing and look at how quickly we saw that result. It was amazing. And then we saw you and told you all about
Yeah.
the story. It was
No, it's
amazing.
so cool. It's so cool. And I thought of you because in March, 2 months later, when I was in at Evolve this year, I was on the beach and it was an ocean of starfish on the beach.
Oh,
Like
I love that.
washed up, alive, missing limbs, whatever, but it was like an ocean of starfish. And then for me, the way I know God is there is eagles. And I was walking on the beach that morning and there was a bald eagle on the beach eating one of the starfish.
Wow. And
Yes.
and how often do you
Yes.
see that? Like that's amazing.
Never a bald eagle
Yeah.
on a beach. I've never seen a bald eagle like on a
No.
beach, obviously in the woods or whatever, sure, but never like just hanging out on a beach having breakfast. Yeah.
See, and those are the signs right there. Those are like the things that constantly now are reminders of God's with you, God's with you, God's with you. And a
Yeah.
lot of times that's what I depend on is those little reminders to remind me.
So as you were coming through kind of like the awakening process, right? Everything
Mm.
happened with you in Hawaii. And even though you knew and had a relationship with God prior to that, you still went through this kind of spiritual awakening that started with that. So a lot of people who listen to the show are maybe not in that spiritual awakening for themselves yet, or they're kind of trying to understand it for themselves. What did it look like for you like a few months in after that happened? Like how did you transition yourself to the Angie that we see today? Because there's a process behind that. It doesn't just like
Mhm.
a switch just doesn't flip and you go, oh, okay, now I'm going to look for everything and everything I do. So what
Yeah.
did that look like for you in the last couple of years?
Yeah, you're right. And it's definitely been layers and there's been parts to it. And, sometimes you can be surrounded by toxic people who
Mm,
can shake your faith more or less, where you think you're crazy for putting all this faith in something that there's no yes, here's your absolute proof. And so
mhm,
for me, it was a process of, yes, it's here. Oh God, no, it's not. And I did something wrong. And maybe I should be doing more. It's almost like this, like, am I doing it right kind of thing where things would go
mhm.
right, but then things would go wrong. And that's just the nature of like my profession and where I'm at in life and the amount of adversity that I have. But it was almost like a go there, but then come back. Am I crazy? Am I not? And then just the more the time would go on, and like when things would get really bad, and I was thinking, oh my God, this is it. This is the end of me. This is the end to Elevate. Like I can't do it. I would have to reflect back and say, is it? Or has God always had your back? And then I would recount
Mm.
like all these times in my life where I felt the same way. I didn't think there was any way out. I didn't think there was a solution. I didn't think there was an answer. And then I somehow
Mhm.
I got through it. And I'm like, okay, so God has always had my back. As long as I keep doing the right thing, I treat people right. I don't harm others. Like
Mhm.
God will always have my back, whatever that looks like. And sometimes we don't know how it's going to happen. And that's been like my big process is like, I don't always know the how. I just got to trust that it's going to happen. And maybe it's not up to me to figure out all the logistics about it because 90% of the time, it doesn't happen the way we think it's going to happen for us.
Yeah. So was there anything that you were like reading or listening to or anything along the way that helped you kind of stay focused on the path ahead?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, tons of books, tons of podcasts. For me, I started like delving into, and it's a little different than the Bible, but like quantum, like
Okay.
how there's scientific proof behind miracles, behind this, behind that. Joe Dispenza,
Mm.
getting into our heart center and like really trying to broadcast that. Equine therapy, where horses mirrored like what was going on with me, like anything I could do that would help me keep growing and realizing more about myself. And then in turn, being a good leader to my people and seeing it work with them as well. Because, one thing I didn't want to do is force specific religion on anybody because
Hmm.
I'm a huge fan of free will. And I feel like,
Hmm.
people who have that forced on them, they'll either rebel against it and end up in rehab, like at my place, or they just say I don't want any of it. And so for me it's more of a leading in a gentle way and providing different paths, knowing that it resonates differently with other people. And so for me that's kind of been the thing because it's been so big for me, but how do I share it with my people but not force them to prescribe to a certain thing but let them get the benefit out of it as well.
Right. So in your recovery methodology, because you what you do in recovery is very different than most recovery centers. So I want you to talk a little bit about that, and also a little bit about how you incorporate some of this faith in there in a secular way, because that's essentially kind of what you're doing. But I would love to hear more about that. I had a my brother, as you know, passed from an overdose about 2.5 years ago, and it was really tough on the family, and he went through many recovery centers before that ended up happening in his life. So I would love to hear about what you do a little bit different, how you incorporate that into recovery, since it's just a critical piece.
It is. And that's how we look at it. So, we don't have any specific denomination, so we leave it open to anybody who just wants to help themselves. And part of our healing is knowing that to truly overcome addiction, there has to be a spiritual, emotional, physical,
Mm.
and what am I leaving out? Mental
Mental.
approach to it. Like, yeah, we've got to, yeah. So, and, part of the mental approach is handling that trauma. Part of the physical approach is CrossFit and yoga. And then for us, part of the spiritual approach is meditation. And now we've incorporated 9D breathing. And for a lot of people, this is where they experience their spirituality because with addiction, you're either in the past or you're in the future. You're not in the present. So if we can like
Mhm.
get ourselves into the present and not be future tripping or regretting our past or all those things, if we can get ourselves into the present, this is where the communion with God or your higher power can come from. So
Mhm.
from day one, we are teaching them the techniques of how to utilize meditation in their lives. And for a lot of people, that is where they experience their connection with God. Some people, they want Bible study, and we can
Yeah.
facilitate that. For some people, it looks differently. And that's what's so cool about it. And the more I've learned about all these different religions, is they're all basically the same. It's just
That
how it's worded or how it's looked at or how the person perceives it. So they're all means of getting people help and what they need and want. It's just making it available for them to get it the way they need to get it. So it is part of their life when they leave. And that is a strong component of their future recovery.
yeah, it's I love that you said that because God, like God is the ultimate creator, right? So just like he creates people differently, why wouldn't he create religions differently? Why
Yeah.
wouldn't there be multiple different religious styles out there leading back to one God to see which one everybody clams to, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's an evolutionary process, just like it's an evolutionary process for his animals, his plants, his kingdom, the rest of it. Why wouldn't it be that way for religion too? What if the original, religions on, on Earth were, they were a trial test for him, and then he's like, oh wait, but what if I did this? And then he creates a whole nother, you know what I mean? So,
Absolutely.
I love that you say that because I believe they were all created differently for a reason. Hmm.
Absolutely. And I think that's, part of the problem is people very much believe in their religion, but it almost becomes inclusionary, where if you don't believe what
Hmm.
I believe, then your belief is not correct. And it's like,
Yeah.
but what if it's all correct? It's just
Yes,
how you view it and hear it. I mean, the Native Americans, they have a totally different one. Buddhists,
that's
they have a
right.
totally different one. And it doesn't
Mhm.
mean they're bad or wrong. They just experience it in a different way. And that's phenomenal. I say
Yeah.
the same thing about rehab. Like, I'm not saying mine is the only way. I do think it's the best way, but it's not the only way. And if someone wants to get help, whether it's smart recovery, AA, NA, whatever it is, great. At least they're getting help. I'm not going to shit on other methodologies or philosophy because
Yeah.
at least it's helping people. And as long as it's helping people, that's all that should matter to us.
Yeah. Well, I think it's beautiful the work that you do. And I
Mm.
mean, you've dedicated your life to it, and Lord knows you've been through ups and downs and everything with it. So I'm grateful to you for the work that you do. And
Oh,
I'm
thank you. And
glad
I'm
that,
grateful to you as well.
yeah, I'm glad that you were able to share some of that with us today. So as we kind of get wrap up, there's like three questions that I ask all my guests. And
Okay.
the first one I kind of already asked, but you might have something else to add to it. So I know a lot of my listeners are always looking for what should I read? What should I listen to? What kind of podcast? What should I watch? So specifically, I know you said Dispenza and some other stuff. Was there any one specific thing aside from the Bible, of course, that is like, oh, to know God, you should really check this out?
Dude, I am totally blanking. Hold on. Let me look through my books real quick and see. On a spiritual level, no, I read some amazing ones. And again, because of the
Yeah,
animal nature,
yeah,
where with equine therapy and people who've bonded from horses and they've created this healing. Like for me, that's the kind of stuff I love
yeah.
because again,
Well, Comfort
it's just
Crisis does that. I mean, that's a great book for those who have not read it and have listened to this. I mean, it's
it's amazing.
get out there and isolate yourself, right? To your point,
A
and you'll
100%
definitely
and push
connect.
yourself outside that comfort zone because that's where the growth is. If we keep ourselves in this little safe, comfortable bubble, we don't challenge ourselves, we don't overcome adversity, we don't grow.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that.
That was a good save. Thank you,
Yeah,
Angela.
oh no, you're good. I mean, I know how much you read, so I get it. I have
Yeah.
people ask me stuff like that all the time, and I'm always like, you get put on the spot, and you're like, I've read thousands of books. Which one should I pick?
Exactly. Exactly. But I will tell you this. Okay. Back in the day, prior to any of this stuff, the one book, and I read it when I first got into recovery, I've read it multiple times since then. It's called The Peaceful Warrior.
Okay.
And I love that one because it talks about a guy and he finds a spiritual guide. It's right up the alley of what I've gone through. But he's an amazing guy, Dan Millman. He wrote many stuff, kind of like Celestine Prophecy. Like there's just no accidents. Everything happens for a reason. So
Mhm.
why don't we look at what's happening and go, why is that happening for me right now? As opposed to like, I can't believe this is happening. It's like, ooh, what am I supposed to get out of this? Almost creating that hindsight in the
Yeah.
present. So, yeah, the spiritual warrior or the peaceful warrior and the Celestine prophecy were really good, really big
Okay.
for me. That put me on this path.
I'll have to read The Peaceful Warrior because I've not read that one before, and I think I had somebody else recommend that too on here, so I'll have to definitely
Yeah,
check
it's a
that one
great
out.
series. He's got like 5 or 6 of them, and they're kind
Okay.
of fun. They're like stories, but
Yeah.
the underlying messages are all the same.
Okay. Cool. So we talked a little on the podcast about when you're in connection with spirit. What does that physically feel like to you? When you are there, you are by yourself and you're kind of in full connection with your intuition and your spirit. Physically, how does that manifest for you?
Kind of like butterflies, like I'm happy, I'm in gratitude. I can feel my heart center is expanding,
Mm.
across to anyone and everyone around. I'm seeing the synchronicities, like, oh, there was that hawk. I knew it. Whatever it is, like it's a confirmation in my body
Hmm.
of being connected to source, which is just such an amazing feeling because, again, going back to when I almost died, I was so disconnected from
Yeah.
myself, from everybody, I built up so many walls to protect myself that I had shut myself out of everything. And so being completely open and free, and connected to God and source and people like you,
Mhm.
that is the true connection that makes me go, I love this
Yeah.
shit.
I love it. I love it. It's so good. All right, so one last question, and this one may be pretty easy for you. It probably will be easy for you because I'm sure you've thought about it. That girl who was in her early 20s, what would you offer her today if you were sitting with her in that jail cell? What would you tell her?
I would say you have a really big purpose.
Hmm.
Have fun. Like, I know it's going to be scary and stressful, but enjoy the process because it's about the journey. It's not about the destination. Enjoy the game. And remember, it's a game that you're creating. You're not the effect of something else happening. You are creating
Hmm.
this.
I love that. I love that. Be in creation mode, not in reaction mode. So good.
Yeah. Well, and when we realize, for me, it's like, wait, I'm creating this somehow. This isn't being done to me. Like, for some reason, I thought that I needed to go through this. This is how I think. So I'm going through it. Why do I need to get out of this so I don't ever have to go through it again?
Yes,
So let's
yes.
learn this lesson.
Yes, I love that. God knows I've had so many repeat lessons. I'm like, okay, okay, I'm gonna learn them this time.
Yeah. And then it shows up in a different form, in a different way. And you're like shocked that it's the same lesson. It's like, how am I here again? Dang it.
Yeah, you're like,
Okay.
apparently I just didn't pass last time. I didn't pass the test.
Exactly. And my God, I need to pass this before I pass.
Yeah,
Like, let's
yeah,
get this
yeah,
right.
yeah, exactly. I don't want to come back again and repeat it all over again.
100%.
That's so good. Well, it has been such a joy today. Do you have anything else that you want to offer to the listeners before we sign off?
I would just say if anybody's struggling with drugs or alcohol, they don't know if they need help. They know somebody that needs help. There are alternatives out there. There are means to help. Hit me up or Elevate. We're here to help or help anybody that is even just curious. Even if we're not the right place, we will find the right place.
Mm.
Um, that would be my shameless plug, but it's
Yes.
truly just an offering of help because there is so many people out there struggling and they don't know where to go and they don't know what to do and they don't even know if they have a problem and they don't know if the person that they're seeing in front of them has a problem. That's for us to help you figure out how to navigate that situation.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I have been to Angie Centers and they are full of love. And that is one of the things that I appreciate about it. I think the thing that hit me the most when I came out to visit you is the fact that you are so engaged with the clients who are there. You're teaching them CrossFit, you're teaching them the things that you've been through. And as the owner of the company, you have lots of other things you could be doing, but you pour yourself into even just the clients and the facilities are beautiful, like beautiful. Like imagine woods on the side of a mountain that you can see out to the ocean. Like this is it, people. So it's
Yeah.
an amazing, amazing business that you have and that you've built. And I'm so blessed to be a friend of yours and to get to watch you on your journey.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
same. It's been
yeah,
a great relationship that we've
yeah,
had, and I'm so grateful for that.
yeah. Me
And
too.
thank you for your help. You're helping me. We're doing a charity golf tournament, and
Yes.
you volunteered your help me, try to raise funds because we get so many people that want to do our program, but they can't afford their out of pockets or deductibles, or they don't have insurance. And it's like we could help so many more people if we could get help from others to be able
Mhm.
to facilitate that. And so we're having our first golf tournament coming up, and you've been instrumental in helping us do that. Your knowledge in this field is absolutely amazing. And we're hoping to raise funds so that we can assist those clients that need the help that aren't able to financially afford it or have the resources to do so.
Yeah, and I will have the links for all of that in the show notes and obviously ways to contact you so that people can get involved. It is in California, but we will have sponsors from all over the country. So super
Absolutely.
excited about that too. And that's October 4th. So
You got
just in
it.
case anybody wanted to know. So, well, Angie, thank you so much for being on today. I absolutely adore you. And thank you all for listening to Evolve Through God. And we'll catch you on the next episode.